I think, are you on mute? Are you on mute? I think you muted the.
Is this better?
Oh
It
no,
should
we're.
work now.
Yeah. Okay, it
All
should be
right.
fine
Sorry,
now.
guys.
Yeah.
Um, yeah. So I guess hope everyone's well and welcome to week. Is it 14 now? 14 of Virtual Cinema Club with
Yeah.
dir-
Yeah. We're on week 14.
with director Zhang Yimou, and we saw two films by him: The House of Flying Daggers and Shadow. Um, and yeah, I guess we'll get right into it. Um,
Dive right in. Yeah. Do you want to like just talk about what? Um. Let's see. Like start with House of Flying Daggers, just
yeah,
because it's the first one.
yeah, it's a bit
Um.
older. Um,
Yeah.
it's very. I mean, just like putting the two films next to each other, even just very interesting visually because one is
Yeah.
completely like filled with color and
Exactly. And then the other one's sort of just like completely
devoid of it.
dark. Yeah, and like very rainy and like they're like two very distinct moods.
Yeah, yeah,
You know.
exactly. Um,
Um. And I think that's just like super interesting.
yeah, and you can also
But
see.
I think this.
Go ahead.
Sorry, I was just gonna say that there's some like similarities. Between the two, despite that,
Mm-hmm.
which I mean, I think we'll get into in a bit.
Yeah.
But it was just interesting to see how you could have two films that like look and
Mm-hmm.
feel so different, but also have kind of a common like thread.
Yeah. I mean,
Um,
one of those common threads that I kind of found very interesting, and maybe it's like you can see how the action has kind of evolved, or how they shoot the action scenes has kind of evolved over time. Because like the first one, it kind of reminded me something similar to like Crouching Tiger, Hidden Dragon, right? Where it's
yeah,
more
but less stylized, right? Like kind of more realistic ish,
Um, yeah, but then there was
ish.
like parts of it where they're like it felt choreographed, almost like a dance at times.
Yeah.
Right? And I think that's kind of where I'm like saying it's maybe a little similar to Crouching Tiger, Hidden Dragon. And even like when the
Mm-hmm.
enemy soldiers kind of ran through the fields, they all had their swords behind them in a very specific way and
Yeah.
stuff like that.
Yeah.
Um, and I think the second film, Shadow, kind of takes a little bit of that dancey type of. Sorry, am I freezing up?
Style. Yeah.
Yeah, yeah, the poetic dancey type of style, but then also kind of injects a certain, I guess maybe you could say Western influence in terms of the editing patterns and the kind of
Mm-hmm.
the weaponry and kind of how it becomes a little more with the slow motion and this and that, and it kind of starts to, I guess, modernize in some sense. Because the first one felt very like
Yeah.
almost like something from theater, maybe, or something, you know? Um,
Mm-hmm.
and
I think that whole like the scene
mhm.
when they're in the I don't know it's a brothel, right?
Mhm.
Basically.
Yeah, yeah, yeah.
Um, and then he's like throwing those seeds or beans or
Mhm.
whatever it is on those drums.
Yeah.
And she's sort of like copying
Mhm.
that drum pattern, I guess.
Yeah.
I mean, I think that was like a really interesting sort of like set. Not set. I think we've seen some fights before that, but like it just sort of like sets like an interesting sort of context or like a background
Mhm.
to how like what you should expect in terms of just like the movement of or in the film,
Yeah.
which I thought was kind of interesting.
Yeah.
Um,
And when I first saw her character, May's character, be introduced, I actually was like, "There's no way she's blind. She's not blind. There's just no way it's gonna."
oh,
I
yeah,
kind of thought that like they said she's
yeah.
blind, but she's not actually. And then over the course,
She's like pretending.
yeah, I thought she was pretending.
Yeah.
But then over the course of the film, like you start to like actually buy into the fact that she might be blind,
Yeah. I
just
mean
because.
that's interesting because I didn't think it sort of just like sets it up that
Uh
I
huh.
believed it
Uh huh.
from the beginning. But then I also believed it when she wasn't blind.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
Like which is like I was like, oh, okay, like it's all right. I'm like
Yeah.
it's good, but what I thought actually, which was interesting, is which they don't really reveal in the end, but is that I thought she was going to be the leader,
Mm. That
like she was
also.
actually,
That also.
that oh yeah, the old leader is dead or assassinated, and um, then this she's his blind daughter, and then she actually is the one who takes over,
Mm-hmm. Right.
instead
Yeah.
of Nia, who I
Yeah.
don't just seems like a random
Yeah.
character.
Yeah. Um, it was, yeah, it was weird because it caught me by surprise and actually had like kind of double the effect when you find out she's not blind. Because it's like if I thought you're not blind and you've convinced me that you're blind over the course of the film, and then you tell me you're not, it's like even more. It's like I saw that coming, but then you
Yeah,
like, yeah,
it's
the
even better.
reversal. Yeah, the reversal of that was
Yeah, yeah,
great.
yeah,
Uh, just
yeah.
yeah,
I mean,
over.
I guess just for background, I mean, we should just
Hmm.
describe what happened, what the film's about,
Yeah,
right? Just so
sure.
that so basically it's sort of set in this specific um era or
Hmm.
dynasty,
Yeah.
I want to say, and basically, there's sort of like two opposing sides, and it's the government versus the House of Flying Daggers,
Yeah, like a
which is
society of sorts.
basically like a yeah, which is like it's sort of like a Robin Hood gang, like not a gang, but like a gang,
Yeah.
and then so they're also like revered and liked by people, but then
Hmm.
also hated,
Hmm.
I guess, by those who sort of are tied to the government, etc.
Yeah.
And then basically this we so that's like the context that they give us, right, in the opening,
Hmm.
sort of with the opening few minutes, um, and then where we sort of are at a point where they're staging this whole thing. So the leader's been assassinated, and they've sort of gone into hiding, and then they're trying to find out who the new, like who's sort of in charge now, and then
Hmm.
take over the whole, or like stamp them out, basically.
Yeah. So that's like the premise of the film, and um, yeah, I think it's just the way they move from kind of. I feel like every I don't know time wise, but like every kind of major story arc or moment has its own like fight sequence within it. So I think there's like maybe
Mm,
like 4 or 5 fight sequences over the course of the film, and it just kind of takes you along this journey for this character, um, for May.
yeah.
Um, and um, I think each fight sequence kind of has its own thing. There's like obviously the opening one where you kind of introduce the character. Then there's the one where they're ambushed the first time. Then there's the one where they're ambushed the second time. Uh, and then
Yeah.
there's the one in the bamboo
And
fields.
which is sort of unexpected, right? That
Exactly.
the first ambush is like it's planned,
Yeah.
um,
Yeah.
which is kind of interesting.
And I think that also that other government official who's like kind of the spy character,
Yeah.
that kind of brings in this very beautiful additional layer kind of into the second half of the film. And it explains a
Mm-hmm.
lot of things, but also at the same time you're like, um, and it kind of actually drives the end of the film really at the end of the. I mean, because
Yeah.
you kind of move past the whole the is it Nia.
Nia. Yeah.
Yeah, it's like you pass that whole like, oh, who's the new leader
Who's the
storyline,
leader? Yeah. Yeah. Yeah.
and now it's kind of moves
Yeah.
into
Which is
this
kind
love
of like
story.
weird, right? Like it was almost irrelevant.
Yeah, and the film kind of switches
Um.
tracks into this love story between May and the spy and the government official.
Mm-hmm.
Um, and no, and you know what was really kind of, I mean, that bamboo fight sequence kind of really kind of firms up the whole kind of that love triangle, I guess. when he kind of starts to fight for her, and he comes back to
Yeah,
get her, right?
yeah,
Like
exactly.
where they split up, and then he comes back to her. Um, I thought that was very. It was just a very beautifully choreographed sequence as well.
Yeah, I mean that sort of like reminded me. That one felt the most similar to Crouching Tiger,
Yeah.
just because you know. But it kind of felt more. I feel like it still feels more real. Like that one just
Mm-hmm.
felt very, um,
Fantasy.
yeah, very fantasy. Just because I think like what they were wearing, it was like all white and like
Mm-hmm.
whereas this one is like very. It just felt more realistic,
And also this
even
one's
though
like
it's obviously
on the
not.
this one's also more so like on the ground, whereas in that one they were like at the top floating and
Yeah,
all of
exactly,
that as well.
exactly.
Um yeah, no, that's for sure.
It
Um
also kind of reminded me of Wanted. Is that the film?
the Angelina Jolie one. Ishan, I think you first.
Yeah,
Yeah.
yeah.
Uh-huh.
Just because of the flying daggers and just
Mm-hmm.
because of the like
The way they kind of
bending bullets or whatever.
right. Yeah.
Yeah, and I was like, why did people get so like bent out of shape that this film had like people bending bullets and like here there's like daggers that are like flying around and like changing direction.
Right.
Um,
Right. Yeah, that's true. Or like they bounce off of shields and stuff like that. Yeah. And I think that's like the interesting thing.
mhm,
There's like a little bit of
exactly.
kind of fantasy element even to something like this. Um, and it kind of, I guess, it's like a blend of like folklore and probably like
Yeah,
and
yeah.
cinema and like and I think we've seen that with other kind of Chinese filmmaking as well. It's kind of um it's interesting because I think some of the the Japanese films we've seen or the Korean films we've seen kind of try to stay more with like realism, and I feel like the Chinese films we see
Hmm.
kind of end up going into more of an escapist, at least from the
Yeah,
ones we've seen,
yeah.
um,
Right.
territory.
Yeah, I mean, I think they lean in the opposite ways, right?
Yeah,
Like in terms of because I think what is the I'm forgetting the name now, but the Wailing, right? I think
yeah,
it's very like rooted in this sort of like folk
yeah,
tale, right?
hmm,
Of this like demon devil character
yeah,
figure it the way we were told the story, like it leans very much in like a you know hyper realist
yeah.
uh type of
Exactly.
thing.
But yeah, that's the thing. It never goes into like fantasy, like or pure fantasy at least. And it's never like escapist in
Yeah.
a way. Whereas like all these films kind of end up, at least the Chinese films we've seen, have kind of gone into that other direction, which is really interesting. And probably has a lot to say about like kind of the people and the kinds of films they're trying to make for their audience. Um,
Mm-hmm.
uh, I
Yeah.
mean, similar to what like movies in the early history of movies in the United States were like in the 30s and the 20s and 30s and probably through the 40s as well. It was about escapism, and so
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
it's interesting to see that in
Yeah, because I mean that's
yeah.
no finish.
No, I'm just saying it's just interesting to see how like kind of you know even though it's the same region, each country. I mean, it's probably just because of like the can't hear. Can you hear better now? Um, just how you know each country kind of presents its stories from like Taiwan to
Yeah,
South like from South Korea,
yeah.
Taiwan and Japan. Um, are you guys getting no audio at all, or is it just low volume, or is it one of the two of us? Sorry. Um,
It's cool.
I hope yeah, I hope it's coming through, that's all. Um, uh, yeah.
Yeah, I think that we're good on the audio thing. But no, yeah, I mean, I think that's kind of that's like really and that's been interesting to see so far, right?
Mm-hmm.
Because they've been so. different, just in terms of. I mean, we sort of also haven't stuck to any sort of like timeline.
Mm-hmm.
Like, oh, we'll watch films from this time, or and then sort of go up, because it's we've sort of just like gone around, back
Yeah.
and forth. But I think it still gives us a nice glimpse into what's happening, or like what sort of like what's going on at that time in that country.
Mm-hmm.
And yeah, I mean, it's been kind of interesting, this point specifically, where I think we discussed it a couple of weeks ago, particularly in like the Korean films, like they're
Mm-hmm.
like very, they're unafraid of sort of tackling the slightly more gruesome things. Like even in
Mm-hmm.
in the violent scenes, like they're very like, they don't shy away.
Yeah,
Um,
exactly.
so I think that's something that's like an interesting thing. That I guess the question would be is like, do they go the other end, right, where it seems so like so much that you kind of just switch out, and then it sort of does, like you go back to being like not
Mm.
escapism, but it's just like, oh, this isn't as realistic.
Right, right, right.
Kind of, I mean, kind of like Tarantino violence,
Mm-hmm.
you know,
Mm-hmm.
which is just like so outrageous and over the top that you
Yeah.
like, for the most part, at least that's my personal
Yeah,
experience,
no,
is
for
that
sure.
you're like, okay,
Yeah. Like
um,
you expect it
you know,
at a point.
yeah,
And you
exactly,
become
and then you're like, yeah,
conditioned.
this is like sort of part of the world.
Yeah.
But I
Um
was I was gonna say something specific.
Also, what I thought was really
I
interesting is
forgot.
that with the regards to the flying daggers as a society, all I don't know if this is true, but like at least from what I saw, or what they show on screen, all of them are women, except for the spy, and the spy is never really actually a part of the flying. I mean, I don't know. Is he a part of the flying daggers, or is he kind of like an accessory
Yeah,
to
yeah,
them?
he is. No, he is.
Okay,
He's a spy.
but
Then
but he's the only male in the flying daggers that we see in the
yeah,
film, at least. Um. Uh. Yeah, I wasn't sure if they were just using him from the outside or like if he was actually a member of the Flying Daggers, but I mean, either way,
I think he is a member, but
yeah,
we do. I mean, we do mostly just see the women.
yeah.
Um,
And it was interesting
which,
to
I mean, I guess we can sort of start talking about that.
about,
Just like I think the main thing
yeah,
uh, was that just the role of women, right, in both of these films, in kind of in a sort of culture that we expect or have come to expect, that leans towards a more like traditional male
mm-hmm,
driven society, right? It's
yeah,
kind of interesting to see that the focus or the prominence is on the feminine or the women
yeah,
aspect of
in
it.
both films. Um,
Yeah, yeah.
and I mean, starting with, yeah, kind of starting with the Flying Dagger specifically. I mean, it's and I think he plays to that in a way too, because he says, because when they find out that the owner of the brothel essentially was one of the Flying Daggers, he's like,
Yeah,
oh,
yeah.
like, and he's caught by surprise. And I think as a director he kind of plays into kind of the expectation of what people like, kind of like the expectation of like roles of women in society,
Mhm.
and then
Yeah.
turns them on their head to kind of surprise you and like kind of play with you
Yeah.
in terms of
Absolutely.
like a twist or something. um and
Yeah.
so when it all starts to connect, you're like, oh, okay, I see what he's doing. He's like kind of, they're kind of unsuspected throughout the film, from the beginning,
Yeah, exactly.
and then when everything kind of switches up, it's it hits you, but you also understand kind of how they're I guess, I mean, in a way, the driving force of what this entire film's been about.
Mhm.
Yeah.
Yeah, exactly.
um did we have any thoughts or any questions from anyone?
Yes. One second. I'll just read
Sweet.
that. There's two.
Mhm.
Yeah, so there was that the from Kritika saying that I was thinking that there was a larger theme to House of Flying Daggers. I keep wanting to say House of Flying Dragons. Like every time, like, and then like stop myself. And then the movie was mostly about the love triangle, and then a second one was that there's so much sustainability in the bamboo fight scenes too. Um, they use bamboo to move as a weapon and like a cage.
Yeah.
Um, and which is actually it's kind of true because like bamboo is sort of that um like it's like it's very sturdy but it's also flexible, like incredibly
Yeah.
flexible,
Yeah, it's
right? So
very
that's kind of,
versatile.
yeah. And then you like really see it in the film, and like when they're moving around and when they're sort of like cutting, like shaving the bamboo
Yeah.
to make them into these like daggers. And also I think the sound was really, like, I really enjoyed it,
Yeah.
you know. But when like especially when they're like caged in,
Yeah.
May and Jin, right, when they all throw it,
Mhm.
um like, and then just like the sound of it like hitting the ground was like
Yeah.
really,
Yeah. Um
um
the what was the first comment again? I had a thought about that and I was like, oh, the themes
it
of
was
the love
larger
story.
themes, yeah.
Yeah. I think it kind of goes to kind of speak about how almost both the men kind of at some point think that they have like control over
Hmm.
what she ends up doing in a way.
Yeah,
And
but I feel like the like Jin's was
Jin,
slightly more
yeah,
um like more modern. I don't want to say better, but like
yeah,
just more modern.
yeah,
And then like Leo's was just annoying.
yeah,
I don't know. Like it just like it really irritated me where he's like, oh, you don't. He's like, you're the love of my life, blah blah blah. Like I loved you for 3 years, or like I did this
yeah,
and that. And then he's like, you don't have to like feel the same way. And I was like, oh, wow, that's pretty big of him. And then he's
yeah,
like, but you can't go with this guy. And he's like, it's your, like, you've made me kill
yeah.
you.
It's almost like I think he hated Jin more than he loved Mei.
Yeah.
And that was like the entire drive for him to like,
And I'm like, dude, what is this?
yeah, exactly. Um, but I think that's what kind of makes, I mean, in a way, it serves as a foil to make Jin and Mei more powerful characters.
Yeah, no, no, for sure. I think he's
Yeah.
like more um
Like he's
like
an
one
ally who,
dimensional.
yeah, he's an ally turned villain. Like he's like a fake, yeah, he's like a fake friend.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah.
Exactly.
Um I actually really love that sequence right before like she tells like the I think is it Nya tells Mei to kill Jin, and then they go out to
Hmm.
this field, and we'll like I kind of pointed it out in the group as well to like pay special attention to
Yeah.
the blocking of that scene,
Yeah,
but
yeah, yeah.
and we can pull up the stills in a bit as well, and just talk about it, but just incredibly done in terms of like instead of making it this over dramatic borderline melodramatic like it had the potential to go into that space,
Hmm.
kind of the restraint in like the choice of kind of making the characters kind of obscure and not being able to see everything. And then when
Yeah,
that
yeah.
there's a moment in that scene where the scene kind of has a beat where everything turns. And then the scene kind of opens up, and I thought that was very like
Yeah. I
very
mean, I
very
think I
well
think a
done.
lot of it, a lot of it's like similar to what we've seen, where, um, where there is like the characters are kind of at a distance
Mm-hmm.
when you would, I guess more conventionally expect to be much closer to them.
Yeah.
You know, which I thought was interesting because like you see so much of it, like you see so much of it through the bamboo as well.
Mm-hmm.
You know,
Yeah.
and I feel like
Going
that plays such a significant role.
Yeah, going to the cinematography like kind of workshop class or whatever we did thing where we started talking about like the kind of details of it. Like one thing that you did kind of notice is that a lot of times, especially in House of Flying Daggers, not as much in Shadow, um, that he used a lot of like long lenses and he
Hmm.
lives kind of in a medium close up a lot of the time of the film, and so the longer lenses kind of start to like you lose a sense of background, and it really becomes about the characters in this space.
Yeah.
And even some of those sequences where they're like running through I don't know, it was like a forest of sorts. Um, the camera's like panning with them from a very far distance, right? Because like and it's not easy to keep an actor in the frame and in focus while they're running and all of that, like I mean as a team and all, but like it's a
Yeah. Yeah.
very
Yeah.
interesting choice because then the sense of movement is so exaggerated and the background is blurring and the characters just like kind of going through the space. um
Hmm.
I thought that was just visually very like powerful and well done, and I think that with the music and the editing patterns that they kind of used really built up some of the tension in those sequences.
Yeah. Yeah.
Um,
No, I think. I mean, I think that like just was very like you just sort of you got to see so much of like the landscape as well.
hmm
And just this and the surroundings, which was kind of
yeah,
like I guess I mean you could say that it wasn't really relevant, but it sort of just puts you in um like it gives you that context of like
hmm
where they are,
yeah,
right? And I think that kind of adds to it
hmm
a bunch.
yeah. Do you want to pull up those
Um,
stills from House of
yeah,
Flying
yeah, I
Daggers?
can do
Because I think we have some interesting stuff to talk
that.
about there.
Yeah, let me just
And then,
set that up. One of the comments critic was just saying that she was wondering how the camera moves so steadily ahead at a quick speed. The forest grounds are mostly very rough. I don't
um,
know if that's about like physically moving or
yeah, it could be a
like
variety of things. I mean, there's so many different tools to do that, and I'm not entirely certain what they would have had back in like when this film was made in the early 2000s. Um,
hmm
like obviously one would be that you get a team to kind of clear at least a section of land, and then you put a dolly on
right.
there. But there's like other vehicles that you can like rent like to drive like a jeep of sorts, and off the top of the jeep they build a crane and then you put it on a stabilizer so the camera is stabilized
Oh wow.
independent of the ground you're on essentially. um I mean not completely stabilized but relatively.
hmm
I don't know if that
But yeah, yeah,
existed
yeah.
back then. I mean it's kind of new and it's a bit expensive.
Mm.
But there is plenty of things like that. Also, could be the other thing that I mean used to exist back then and is Spidercam. So it would just be a camera suspended from wires from a tree, kind of like what you see in some of the
Oh, nice.
sports stadiums.
Hmm.
They'll create a similar mechanism, and then the camera can kind of just move along a cable instead.
Right, right.
So
Oh, nice.
could be.
Okay.
I mean, if I maybe go back and see some behind the scenes type stuff, you can figure that out. But
Yeah, yeah.
yeah.
Okay,
Um,
I'm just sharing the. Since I'm just trying a different version. I don't know. Let me know if you can see it.
yeah, we can see it.
I'm
Um,
all right. Cool. I'm doing the sharing window as
cool.
opposed to just so that I can have more control of it.
Sounds good. Yeah, I mean, this is a beautiful frame. Just kind of I just thought like it was very visually like the use of color was so strong in this film. Um,
Mm-hmm.
and you kind of see that through like the production design, and I mean that's the thing. It's like I don't know much about Chinese history to like comment on kind of like what era this might be and all of that, but
Yeah,
it
yeah.
it 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 begins to kind of paint a image for someone who isn't familiar with it to like kind of start and like understand, like it immediately places you in terms of like time period, right?
Yeah. Yeah, I mean it's like it's very strong just in its like general context.
Mm-hmm.
You know, and like what it's showing you. Like you're very
Yeah.
it doesn't leave like anything out
Yeah.
in that sense to the imagination. I
Yeah.
also, I mean, just since we're on this one, but what I really enjoyed, and this is something in both films, but it's just the floor,
Yeah, I was gonna
right? Like
say
there's so much
detail.
detail and also just like importance given to the floor because like we see a bunch later on. I don't know if we have a screenshot of that, but it's just sort of like a bird's eye view of it.
Yeah.
And like you can see these, I don't know if you can see my cursor, but like this sort
Yeah.
of like these illustrations are slightly more like they're colored in a bit more, right?
Yeah.
And they sort of pop out. And that's kind of, I mean, that's just like an interesting like attention to detail,
Yeah. I mean, yeah,
that
that's
we
exactly
see.
what it was. Like I mean, the attention to detail. I mean, even looking back to the like, deep background behind
Yeah.
the woman on the left. Um like,
Hmm.
you have
Like
this,
here.
yeah, but no, I mean behind that too, like in the room behind her, basically.
Oh, okay. Oh, yeah, yeah,
You
yeah.
have the
Over here
same level of
in this.
detail in the paneling
Yeah,
and
absolutely.
all of that that you do in the in the midground and foreground. And I think
Hmm.
that's what's very like, I mean, yeah, it's that attention to detail that kind of really creates a world. Because I mean, theoretically, like if you're not shooting in that room, you don't need to even, you can just close off that wall and save money,
Yeah,
right?
exactly.
Um,
Exactly.
but
But it,
that's the
it's I guess
thing.
it sort of just adds to the real the
Hmm.
you know that
And
this is like a real place, and then like it adds to just the spatial
hmm,
um quality, or I don't know what it
yeah,
is,
I
but just
mean,
adds to the
yeah.
spatial awareness.
And absolutely, and I think in like in very like, at least traditionally, if you just like think of like how brothels are shown in film, they're very like cramped, small spaces. This is like a huge
And
like
usually dark
palace
as well.
and dark, and this is like this beautifully like lit palace like
Hmm.
place. I mean, that's
Yeah,
why
I
I was,
yeah, very very palatial.
yeah. So it's just like plays, I guess, kind of counter to um your
Perception of, yeah.
expectations. Yeah. Um, Yeah, we can go to the
Cool.
next still as well. Yeah, I thought this was just like, this is kind of what I was talking about with like, even generally they're on kind of on the longer end of the spectrum with lenses. Like this is probably like a 40 or somewhere in the 40 to 50 range, right? And if this is somewhat
Hmm.
of a wide, kind of a wide-ish shot, not like extreme wide, but somewhat wide. And if you're shooting, I mean,
Yeah.
you're on the longer end of lenses in general. But just visually,
Hmm.
I thought this sequence with the flowers was really beautiful. Um,
Yeah. I mean, I think just generally this is like a good one, that because we see this kind of shot throughout the
yeah,
film, right?
yeah,
Where especially like in this field, and like it's her or it's Jin, or there's which we'll see later on. And I
mhm,
think, I mean, one of them is just like a spectacular scene,
yeah. It's
which
also
I
like
just go
you're,
on, or
yeah, it's also like you're coming out of the woods and you have the woods in the background, and then you have this field,
yeah,
and then
yeah, and this clearing, yeah.
so you kind of move from space to space very like visually.
Hmm.
Yeah, we can go to the next one.
Yeah, and then this similar,
Yeah.
yeah, I think just like, so that idea that you were saying, part of that scene, which sort of I guess is hinted at
Mhm.
here, is the seeing the characters through something
Yeah.
else,
And
right?
even,
Is that we're not seeing them directly.
yeah, and even in their close-ups, they're shot through the, the tall grass. It's not,
Yeah,
a direct shot where they
it's not a
cleared it
clean.
out.
Yeah, exactly.
And I thought that's very, very powerful, um, as well. Just kind of the distance that's created, um, by these, by the choice of where the camera is in relation to them, but also
Hmm.
kind of how they play with like elements in terms of like layers between you and the
Yeah, yeah, yeah.
subjects in front of you. Um, yeah, we can go to the next one.
Sorry, I don't know why it's not.
Also very painting like.
Yeah,
times.
this is the thing with um,
Yeah.
where it's used as a cage.
Hmm. But see, like that's like the attention to detail here as well. Like you can, despite everything, like you could have caged them up a bit more, but you might have like lost that, that hand, the hands holding in the background.
Yeah,
Like,
I missed. I mean, I missed that while watching the film.
no, I mean,
Um,
yeah, you probably like I probably missed that
I mean,
while watching the
I
film until
missed like
I,
just holding,
yeah,
but like I know they reached out for each other.
right.
Um,
But I think that's what's so. I mean, that's the thing. It's like, and that's so often the case with films. It's like oftentimes people might not see everything, right? Like you might miss the hand
mhm.
holding in the first viewing, but then it's like
Yeah,
when you go back and see it, or if you do catch it in the first viewing, even it's just like, oh wow, like it can,
yeah.
you know, yeah, exactly. Um,
This is the one I was talking about.
yeah, this one to me
Um,
was just like a painting.
yeah, I mean, it's so like it's so incredibly powerful without sort of being forced. You know,
Hmm. Yeah, and
and
this is kind of,
I just
go
I feel
ahead.
like the green
Yeah,
like it's almost just like a like just variants of green, and
yeah,
it's so nice.
it's very like
Um, hmm
monochromatic in a way, and I think this is what like it just like you were saying, that variance of green, but like just how you kind of have the the shade of green that they're wearing is slightly off from
yeah,
the bamboo, and it just kind of pulls them away from the,
yeah,
everything else.
and from the floor and the like the
Yeah,
grass even,
exactly.
you know, and I just like I feel like this could like quite easily be like in a film or a or a show or whatever that you'd see today or
Yeah.
or
No, to me it
like
almost
in
felt like,
production.
yeah, it almost felt like a superhero moment in a way.
Yeah,
Um,
could easily have been
you
like
know,
that.
like an army of whatever you want
Yeah,
to say come together or something. But yeah,
absolutely.
um, really beautiful. Um, so this is that sequence I was kind of talking about in the
That you were
group,
talking about. Yeah,
and just kind of how even in the close up you only see like her nose and lips, and you really don't get to see her eyes, which, you know he's kind of going off, and they're talking about, the relationship or whatever, and she knows she has to kill him, and if she doesn't, she's probably gonna die,
yeah,
right?
exactly.
And so it's that like silent moment of her like almost kind of making a choice or trying to make a choice. And then you have like the wide shot, which is after this, um, the next frame, I think.
Sorry.
Yeah, no
Yeah, yeah,
worries, no worries.
yeah. This one.
Yeah, and see, even here it was, and especially with him blindfolded, and then you can't see her eyes either. You're seeing neither. Um,
Yeah, exactly.
and then I think she lets him, she sets him free essentially, or she cuts the rope, and then that's when you kind of see her eyes because she's made that choice,
hmm
and then there's no turning back at this point.
Exactly.
Um,
And then I mean I think what's interesting just with that the idea of that choice is that I think that's the last one. You want me to leave it up or no? There's
there's
more.
one more, yeah,
Yeah, yeah. But is that like she makes this choice here and then she also makes a choice later on, right?
yeah,
Um, After he leaves, which I thought was kind of interesting. I didn't quite expect it. I'm just gonna go to the next one.
yeah,
Yeah, this is where you see that. Like I don't know about if you did, but like I didn't quite expect that she would like go after him
yeah,
and like choose to join him. You know,
yeah, 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 yeah. Same,
it seemed kind of unexpected,
yeah,
but
but
um,
yeah, just overall,
but
just
no, I
a,
mean, yeah, but like not that it didn't work.
yeah.
It just like I was like not. I was like,
Hmm.
oh okay.
Yeah. Do we have any like new comments or thoughts about House of Flying Daggers, and then we can jump into Shadow?
The colors and the textures are amazing towards the end, clothes surrounding, etc.
Yeah. I feel like it'd be super fun to work on a period film, just like from costumes to sets to locations to photographing it.
Yeah.
I just feel like
Uh,
you kind of have to create everything, which is why it would be super
yeah,
fun.
yeah, you do. There's another one, the way seasons were depicted too, like when they quickly change from the blooming fields of forest, autumn, when he leaves, and then when it snows at last. Yeah,
Very
I think
interesting. I
that's something that,
actually didn't think about that, but you're so right.
yeah, it's me either. But it sort of just like
Yeah.
happens at that those like appropriate um,
And it's more
junctures, and then it,
but it's more like emotional, I think, than like
yeah,
realistic, you know? It kind of
yeah,
just
yeah,
drives you emotionally
like
through
it
the
doesn't
film
change. It's not like changing
in real time.
as you would expect. Time, like it's like time sort of like moving
Hmm.
as the story and the emotion progresses, which is kind of interesting.
Yeah.
Which I don't know if we've necessarily seen in other films that we've seen.
Yeah.
Um,
And it's weird cuz we also didn't question it until now.
yeah, yeah, yeah,
um
exactly.
so like
Like it just sort of like flows, it like just like flowed in.
mhm,
It was like very natural, just in terms of the way the
mhm.
rest of the world was set up, and like
Yeah.
the what we were
Yeah.
willing to accept.
Yeah. I forget who kind of said this, but like someone said this once, which is kind of like shoot what it shoot what it feels like, not what it is, which I think is very
Hmm,
apt as well.
interesting. Yeah, yeah, yeah.
Um,
Absolutely.
but yeah, I think that's yeah, I think that's great. Should we kind of just jump into Shadow a little bit?
Yeah,
Um,
yeah, yeah,
and and then we can obviously like if anyone has any thoughts can chime in. Um,
yeah.
do you want to start with the visuals just because we were speaking about that, and then like use that as a starting point to get into story and themes and all of that?
Yeah, yeah. I think we could, because I'm just trying to.
It's so different from House of Flying Daggers.
Yeah, it's so different, but also like I think, I mean, I just like I thought the beginning and ending was like just great.
Yeah,
Uh,
just visually, it was so
yeah,
like it's very um, I use this word, or you can use this word like graphic in the sense that it wasn't like graphic in terms of like violence, but in terms of like the compositions and the use of contrast and
yeah,
very like the I guess you could say that there's like a strong sense of shape and like I guess the layers and I think especially I think it just has to keep going back to contrast really. And like I think from the onset of the film, uh I
hmm.
was immediately reminded of this photographer um
Wait,
from
say that last bit again. What
I-
before set? I didn't.
oh, I think just from the onset of the film I was kind of
Oh yeah, okay.
reminded of this photographer,
Hmm.
Fan Ho. I believe he's from Hong Kong. And I just kind of pulled a few of his images to send to Ishan to present, but just kind of that silvery quality that
Yeah,
the film has is also in Fan Ho's work. And I think it was an interesting choice that they made on from the filmmaker side to to preserve the skin tones. Um, kind of, you know? I mean, definitely desaturated, but that's the only color you really see, the skin tone. Everything else is kind of eliminated.
yeah,
And I'm
exactly.
it's not that I don't understand why, but I'm curious to like it worked for the film, no doubt, but I was just curious why they might have chosen to do that. And I think occasionally
Hmm.
you see some blood here and there
Yeah,
in
yeah, you
red.
do. And then I think also you see. I'm just trying to think. Was it the instrument? No, actually, yeah. I guess you don't. Huh.
Yeah. I think it was like all like human related, like skin and blood pretty
Yeah, yeah,
much.
yeah, yeah.
Um but
That's true.
yeah, um
I'm just gonna put up the
yeah,
fanho
for
images.
sure. Um so yeah, I mean I think like when I say like the graphic nature of these images, especially like in the film and in here as well, you kind of have like a very a dark element against kind of like with this here I guess you guys can see my mouse on live, but this boat is also kind of in front of backlit um backlit water. So they kind of pop against that layer, so to speak, and then
Mm-hmm.
the fog is against a darker mountain. So then that's also like, just the use of layers, but very
Yeah. 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 Yeah.
stark, bright and dark like spaces creates that
Yeah.
sense of like,
It's sort of just the interaction between the different physical elements.
yeah, because I think if that fog wasn't there, this image would just become flat, you know? It
Yeah.
wouldn't feel
Yeah. Yeah.
as 3D as this image is.
Yeah, or also like there'd be so much information, right? Because you'd
Yeah.
have the boats you'd have the paddle boat, you'd have the big ships on the left, and then you'd also be able to like properly see the rest of the ships
Yeah.
behind,
Yeah,
you know,
exactly. Um
and then sort of you wouldn't know where to look, I feel.
exactly. So like this has a very like guided sense of like that's
Hmm.
where your eye has to go, and then you start to explore from there.
Yeah.
Um
Right,
a-
this one.
yeah. And even here I think there's that silvery quality like I'd mentioned, but also
Yeah.
just the sense of kind of layers that they've
Hmm.
used in the film.
I mean, you sort of also just like in the center here, there's just like a mass of people, right? So you're
Yeah.
like not even really focusing there, but then I feel like just this
Yeah.
sorry, just this head, and then with the light on the hair,
Yeah.
sort of just catches like it's just that bit brighter, or
Hmm.
you know,
The head
just
on the
more.
left, and
I don't
then
know.
the guy smoking on the right. They kind of,
Yeah, exactly.
and then you have like an
They frame
equally,
they frame the whole thing. To be honest.
and then from the seat, like from the rooftop as well, you have these like canopies of sorts, and those
Hmm.
are also equally busy, um in its own regard. Kind of like a like compositionally, it just has like a certain balance between the
Yeah.
negative space is not just negative space, it's like being used in a storytelling kind of way,
Yeah.
or like an
That's
image
true.
making kind of way. Go to the next one briefly. um,
This one's
yeah, this kind of reminded me of like that
lovely.
the sequence where they're the attack on the city, um,
Hmm. Hmm.
just
Yeah.
the
Yeah.
the perspective
On
also.
Jing.
Yeah. Um, I think I only sent you three
So
photos. Yeah,
yeah, that's it.
cool. But yeah, anyhow, I think it just like, and if you guys are very like, if you guys are keen to look into his work, there's so much on his website as well of like just years and years of his
Nice.
work, and it's all incredible. Um, yeah, Fan Ho. Uh, but yeah, I think it's just visually such a striking, but I think the black and white kind of starts to begin to play into that idea of yin and yang that they kind of explore from the very
Yeah.
onset of
Yeah.
the film, and then every single like fight sequence in a way also is on
Is
a,
related to that.
yeah,
Yeah.
but it's on the ground. They're pulling from yin and yang, and then even that idea of like the spear and the like the masculine and the energy,
Yeah. Exactly.
and then
Exactly.
and then they discover that to beat that you need the water, the umbrella
Yeah.
weapon, and the
Yeah.
feminine. And I thought that was very fascinating, and they keep going back to that as far as like a theme is concerned over the course of the
Hmm.
film, or
What
a motif, I
what yeah
guess.
what I yeah what I thought was interesting about that is that which kind of felt like a new, not a new, but just like a different way of handling it, was the difference between the masculine and feminine,
Hmm.
right? Where it wasn't necessary, it's not necessarily, which we kind of see a lot, is that like one is like strong, and then the other is weak, right?
Yeah,
Which is in a lot of instances we sort of, that's what we're told, but really what you get here is that it's two parts of one,
yeah. I mean,
right?
one
which
kind
which I
of,
think,
yeah. Go ahead.
like, yeah, like they sort of balance each other out, right? Like you need moments, uh they sort of say that you need seem to suggest that you need moments of strength and sort of whatever, like over
Yeah.
aggression maybe, and then but you also need to balance it with I guess moments of like compassion, empathy, etc.
Yeah, and I think like
um,
what they were trying to explore with like the feminine like battles, the motions of the battle,
battle,
and that
yeah,
it
approach, yeah,
it has a little bit of it feels to flow more, whereas um the spear and the masculine, it was like very much like
a more
here's,
punctuated,
yeah, it's like
yeah,
a
and sharper,
staccato,
yeah,
it's like a
yeah,
staccato type of thing, where it's just like it's the one action and then it's a reset and then it's another action and then it's a
yeah,
reset,
exactly.
whereas
And then
yeah.
just adding to that, what I thought was really interesting is that when his wife, because I think her role is also significant
Oh yeah,
here, right?
absolutely.
She's the one that says, oh, this is what you need to do, or this is how you can defeat him. But what I thought was really interesting is that when they're teaching the rest of the people, right, the
Mhm.
rest of the
Mhm.
fighters, that everyone sort of already knows it,
Mhm.
right? Like they're
Yeah.
like, oh, you have to use feminine movements or feminine,
Right.
like whatever,
Yeah.
flow, for
Yeah.
you to conquer. It wasn't like, oh, we need to explain to you now
Mhm.
what those are. It was kind of just like, oh, okay, yeah, sure, let's do this. Like
Yeah.
we know all of it, which just felt very refreshing, to be honest.
Yeah. I think it like part of that could be kind of like the 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 husband's kind of own ego and his own way of like, this is how I'm going to beat him, even though it's not going to be my body physically beating him type of a thing, you
Yeah,
know?
yeah, yeah,
Whereas like everyone else kind of doesn't have that pride and that
yeah.
ego, and they're just kind of, and and
But
that's,
he seems to like accept very quickly
yeah,
that she needs to train him.
yeah, absolutely. Um, yeah, you're right. But I thought that I mean maybe that's kind of where it stems from, because like if everyone else already knew it, uh, it would have to
Yeah, like
stem from
he's
somewhere.
sort of not he's not able to see that
Yeah,
um
yeah,
clearly,
yeah,
even though he is sort of like he has the distance
yeah,
from it,
yeah.
because it's not.
I
Um,
I thought the
but
yeah. Did we want to? Oh, so just to kind of like, sorry, we should have done this to start, but maybe to set up the
yeah,
film for people.
yeah, I was just thinking.
Yeah.
But yeah, go for it.
So basically, the film is about the Pei. I won't say it's a dynasty, but kingdom, I guess. The Pei
Yeah,
Kingdom, and they're kind of in this peace treaty with another kingdom, and but their city has been
that's like taking, yeah, that one of the cities is in.
captured by them, but they're in a peace treaty by it, and then the king has just kind of come to the throne, and he, you know, kind of offers up his sister to
Yeah,
to get married to the son, I guess, um,
yeah, of
of that enemy, um, or not enemy, but I guess ally of sorts in a way. Um,
yeah.
but then like I guess like
So
the
basically, yeah, so they
people,
lost the city of Jing,
yeah,
to another kingdom of Yang.
yeah,
So basically, Pei and Yang are the two kingdoms, sort of
hmm,
not going against each other, but they just like have a treaty, a
yeah,
peace treaty.
yeah, and basically the film's about this one general who's committed to reclaiming this lost city of
Jing, yeah, Jing,
Jing, but also defeating kind of that the king of that city in a duel. And it's
yeah.
both parts
Who's renowned, like who's known to be this like unbeatable
master.
warrior.
Yeah.
Yeah,
Um, and and the film's like twist is that the general basically has he calls him a shadow, but essentially an identical
It's like a lookalike, yeah.
lookalike who kind of takes his place after himself was injured
Hmm.
the first time. Uh,
Yeah, and sort of is like this very like is a much older and like a shadow of himself right
yeah,
now after this like injury,
yeah,
which is kind of it's sort of like another layer
yeah.
um, on this thing.
And so the film is about figuring out a way to defeat, you know, this this kingdom that's kind of taken over Jing, but then also like it's like a personal battle, but it's also like a very like, it's
Yeah,
for our kingdom type of a
I
battle as
mean, so
well.
it's basic. I mean, basically, then we like learn right is that he wants to take over just the kingdom in general,
Yeah.
right? Like he wants to defeat the emperor of the Yang Kingdom or the king of Yang Kingdom.
Hmm.
And then once that's done, he's gonna like overthrow the king of
Yeah,
Pei because he
exactly.
feels like
He's
he's like a young uh, kid who like doesn't really know much.
right, right, exactly. Um, so yeah, that's kind of how you get, that's a journey of the film, and I thought the ending was very interesting as well. Um,
Hmm.
Kind of how all these pieces and all these like kind of how the personal battles and the battle for the kingdom and the city kind of coalesce into this one thing.
One
Because
sort of
it's
yeah.
interesting because I thought once the battle of Jing like happened, I thought the film was going to end essentially, but then there's like this whole
Hmm.
last bit,
Whole second yeah,
like a second ending in a
where
way.
he's trying to he like goes back home and then finds out that his mother's been killed and he assumes that um
Yeah,
it's the commander, right, who's done
yeah,
that.
yeah.
And then he's sort of saved by some guy
Hmm.
and then is told like, are you gonna come back?
Yeah,
And so that's also kind of a point because I feel like there's the it's about a choice, like right
hmm,
through the film it sort of runs that like it's about choices
yeah, yeah.
because it sort of like starts with that
Hmm.
where the commander's wife has to make a choice and you
Uh-huh.
sort of like don't know what's going on
Yeah.
because she's like at the door and she like pulls open the door and then you sort of get into um, the beginning of the film
Yeah.
without realizing that you're going back,
Yeah.
so it's kind of like that, um, like a flashback ish, but we don't necessarily know. It just like goes all the way to the beginning,
Yeah.
and then he makes his choice about coming back to the kingdom, and basically
Mhm.
the shadow becomes or attempts to become the real person.
Yeah. Exactly. Um yeah. Yeah. I think like kind of really explained it.
Yeah,
I thought that bit about, with her at the door with the eye, like the door, the light hitting her eye, I thought just
yeah,
visually was just incredible.
was yeah,
Um
yeah, yeah,
and kind of that decision of whether she's going to kind of, and it's also, and they also play with another thing, which is like as he's becoming, or as he plays the character of this commander, the wife kind of falls in love with him.
yeah. And I
And
mean they each other, right? Like they
yeah,
fall for each other.
exactly.
It seems.
um
And then she has that choice. Like, does she agree? Because she's the only
Witness.
yeah, who knows that he's not actually the real commander, right?
Yeah.
So does she play along, and then does she like accept that no, that I will now believe that he is my husband,
Hmm. Yeah, and it's like why
or do I
wouldn't,
reveal?
and yeah, and it's like why wouldn't they believe him, because he just kind of reclaimed the city of Jing and all of that, so he has,
Yeah,
I guess,
he has
power.
all of sort of the evidence, so to speak, to back his claim.
Yeah, exactly. Um, so yeah, I thought that was really cool. I think, like we spoke a bit earlier about like the role of the wife. I think she's like actually like kind of the film kind of pivots around her more so than anyone
Yeah.
else. And even the sister, I thought that was very, I didn't expect her to be in that, the ship
In the yeah.
to, overthrow that the city of Jing and kind of reclaim it. And then kind of she's also given an arc that kind of fulfills itself in a way.
Yeah, and then the whole like she uses the present that dagger to
Yeah, to kill.
kill the son,
Yeah.
the younger Yang. Um,
Hmm. Yeah. Did anyone have any thoughts about the film or any questions? I guess. We.
yeah, there was a few, but from Kritika saying that she thought Daggers was weird, but Shadows got even more weird.
Yeah.
um, and then, but more seriously, the visuals were artsy and like calligraphy painted screens, which I thought were
Yeah.
lovely. And then even the design on the dresses they wore,
Yeah.
um, it's sort of just like very unified and
Yeah.
um, worked really well together. And then the last one is for the last third portion of the movie. The aesthetics just got progressively very Japanese looking, like
Interesting.
watching the Japanese movie with Chinese characters, which is kind of
Interesting.
interesting.
Yeah. Did
Um,
you I sent you a couple screenshots from kind of the end of, I guess, Shadow, right? Do you have those?
yeah.
Yeah.
hmm
I mean,
Yeah.
just briefly to kind of, in case people
Just
haven't seen the
title.
film, just visually. Yeah. So this is like one of my favorite shots of the film.
Yeah, it was.
Uh, just the it's all very it's a night shot, so it's a little bit on the darker side of
Yeah,
the
I
spectrum,
mean, but
but
just like this, just like the background, like landscape,
yeah,
also just feels so much like a painting.
with the fog. Um,
Yeah, and
and that's the thing, it's like all in the blocking as well, because it's like, and a little bit further back he would have been lost in the shadow, but because of like kind of where
mm-hmm.
he is,
Because of where he is. Yeah, yeah,
you get that sense of, I guess, like kind of that graphic quality I was talking about.
yeah. I mean, yeah, I mean, yes, but also similarly, like that they sort of each just the placement and like where each physical element is in relation to one another, like really
Yeah.
just like reinforces it and sort of um, adds to each one.
Yeah. And that's the thing, and like Kritika said, it starts to feel very, in a sense, like in terms of like ink calligraphy and
Only
all
this
of
like
that.
tree now, like the more that I look at it,
Yeah.
like the
Um
trees specifically, like seems very like a solid dark.
yeah.
Um, you know,
Yeah.
um, I'll just go to the next one.
Yeah. And this one too, I kind of thought like, and you always see
Yeah, I
this,
mean
the
similarly.
background. Yeah.
Yeah,
I
it's
mean,
just like it's like an unreal background.
yeah. I mean,
Like the
this
more you
might
look at it, like um,
yeah, and
the
this
less
might
real it
be
feels.
yeah, this might be VFX as well. Like they might have just VFXed in the background.
Oh, okay,
I mean,
maybe
yeah, just because I mean that level of fog and everything, to like, you can't ever
it's like
control
tough.
it,
Yeah,
right? I mean, you
control.
can't.
Yeah, yeah,
Yeah,
exactly.
um, it's just luck, but that's easily VFXable. So they might have
hmm
done that.
But this is also like at the end, right, where they're
Yeah,
all sort of waiting outside.
exactly.
Um,
Um, but I just thought like the idea of, I mean, just like the number of people and like the use of contrast, right? It's like it
hmm
explores like almost every frame, if not every frame, kind of
Yeah.
explores the darkest black to the brightest white, and that whole range,
hmm
um,
Yeah.
in a way, which is like absolutely incredible.
hmm
Yeah.
Yeah. So I think that's you said it.
Cool. Did we have
Um,
any
I'm just
other?
gonna check.
Yeah. If you have any more
Yeah, I'm
comments or
just
anything.
checking. No, I think that's it. But we can. I mean, we can just wait for a bit.
Cool.
Oh, Kritika said greetings for the 4th of July.
Oh, yeah.
I hope you're enjoying Independence Day.
Yeah. A lot of
Freedom.
people have been,
Freedom.
yeah, over here I think it's turned into a very like political thing now. Everyone's like,
Oh yeah.
let's cancel July 4th basically.
Not
And
surprising.
yeah, I mean, people are kind of, at least the past few days I've been seeing so many people out and about, which scares me about this weekend especially.
Mm-hmm.
A lot of people going to the beach and stuff too, even though everything is shut.
Oh wow.
And we've been put on lockdown again, so, or
Oh.
stay at home orders,
Mm-hmm.
because California cases have been going up.
Yeah, sure.
But it's all good.
Yeah.
More movies to watch.
Yeah, exactly.
Um,
Cool. So should we just chat? We can chat quickly about next week's
yeah.
session because it's slightly different. So what we're gonna do next week is like it's a bit of a break because we're at week 15.
Mm-hmm.
So what we're gonna do is just take 2 scenes and do sort of like a scene breakdown or like
Mm-hmm.
a anatomy of a scene sort of situation, and then one of them will be uh, a scene that we were planning on doing during the cinematography session that we didn't quite get to, and then the second one will be from one of the movies that we've already seen, so
Mm-hmm.
that it's potentially something that is familiar to folks, and will be nice to sort of like just see it in detail and like uh, broken down,
Yeah, and
I
just
guess.
kind of, yeah, take kind of some of the concepts we talked about from the cinematography work, like, you know, you know, details,
Yeah,
I guess, workshop. I don't know what you want to call it, but
yeah,
and kind of
or
applying
just
that,
session, I guess.
yeah, and just applying that in terms of like, so that just so you guys know, the idea is going to be like, we'll have the script in front of us, we'll quickly read through the script, and then
Yeah.
kind of see how it translates from the page to, the visual scene, um, and see,
Hmm. And I
where,
mean, I think what
yeah,
we will also do, so is just like share some of that if it's like available on YouTube and stuff. Just share it earlier on the Telegram group, and then people can go through it, um,
yeah, on their own time,
in advance. So,
yeah,
yeah, so that it's like, yeah, if you want, but
yeah.
we'll.
We'll also help you guys with that. So yeah, sounds
Yeah,
great. And yeah, see you guys next week.
I think that's it.
Cool.
Yep.
Sounds good.
Cool. Thanks
Yep.
to everyone that joined in. We'll see you in the next one.
Yep. All right. I'm gonna stop streaming.